WEFUNK. We funk.
But for now, we'll get into it with our opening punch on the show, where, of course, we take a look at the big story in the sport. And on this episode, of course, it is the recent official fight announcement of the epic rematch between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. And I guess if you've been listening to the show since the beginning, you know it has been such a big story in the sport of boxing, and then there be it on the Big LW KO cast as well, as just so much build-up and so much weight and anticipation to the epic rematch. And last episode, as a matter of fact, we talked about how the last hurdle to go was going to be the Wilder-King Kong Ortiz match, and then after Wilder got the knockout, we very much expected the rematch announcement to follow, which is exactly what happened, set for February 22nd in Vegas, the undisputed capital of the boxing world. Tickets going for a mere $650 for the cheap seats at the MGM in Vegas. This being, a full month and a half out of fight night. So, tickets probably going close to $1,000 to get you in the door, which will be just an absolutely electric atmosphere for one of the most highly anticipated, heavyweight battles in the last 20 years, really, in all honesty, and really just one of the biggest fights in boxing in the last, decade or decade plus anyway, as well. So going to be a crazed atmosphere if you're one of the fortunate few at the MGM Grand in Vegas. All the other assholes like myself are going to be at home watching on pay-per-view, which is another big story of the whole event, although kind of boring and business-oriented, but I'll get into it, I guess, a little bit later, and we've talked about it, before throughout the course of the show so far in the last couple episodes, about how the business of boxing making it oh so complicated to get mega fights off, with different fighters kind of contractually obligated to different specific broadcasting networks. This being one of the real first true co-produced mega cards where Fox and ESPN are getting together to co-produce this pay-per-view, knocking down the doors for other future big mega card pay-per-views as well, a la Crawford Spence, which, we'll get into a little bit later on, but that was kind of the problem on the horizon for Spence and Crawford in the big welterweight, mega fight. However, Spence's now recovery from the car crash and that whole scenario looks to have kind of postponed that for a while. But Fury and Wilder instead kind of, setting the tone for what could really be a major development in the future boxing, and the, just prospect and potential for so many different, just great mega fights, and just the opportunity for so many different fights if we can kind of get a little bit more, co-production between your, Showtimes and your ESPNs and your DAZNs and your Fox, just all of the different media outlets that's given us, boxing fans so much more, coverage of the sport. However, kind of, precluded internetwork violence, so to speak. So that getting knocked down on the ESPN Fox pay-per-view card for the Wilder-Fury match, which, like I said, is one of the most highly anticipated fights of the last decade plus, being a rematch where the first fight just brought such a shot of life into the boxing world. And then they've kind of sat on this rematch, building up the anticipation for a little too long, perhaps. I don't know. We'll get into that in a couple of minutes, I suppose, as well as the first fight taking place in December of 2018. So we're talking, 14 months or, a year plus anyway from the first fight to the rematch. And over that time, has the American public kind of forgotten about the epic call to the 10 count from Fury getting on his feet after that dramatic late round knockdown from Wilder, when interest and awareness in the sport was just so high and everybody was talking about the Wilder-Fury first fight? Was the 14 months in between a little too long from the two great heavyweights who both in their own right as well really are very, very quality, champion level heavyweights in a division that has been so starved for any good fighters really since the Klitschko brothers. Now we have Wilder and Fury both undefeated with the draw against each other thrown in there as well. But, so very impressive resumes, very different styles, both in the ring and out of the ring, as well as they're both very kind of unique and interesting stories, both very kind of marketable in their own ways, as well in the ring. Both have different, very unique, defined fight styles, whereas I guess just in general, Wilder, the most vicious knockout artist since Tyson, with no hyperbole, just an absolute one-punch power, will end the fight. Just ask Dominic Breazeale in the in one of the most recent epic knockouts. It took him a little bit longer versus King Kong Ortiz and one of the other real top-line heavyweights in the division. In his most recent fight, knocked him out again. But all in all, 42 wins, 41 coming by way of knockout, and a lot of them in the highlight reel variety. So just an absolutely, devastating right hand of death from Deontay Wilder, who as well, I guess, kind of carries a similar persona in his out of the ring kind of, presence and, like I said, just, image. But he's a scary dude and appears to be a true life bad mofo. And just all in all, and he really does come across actually as, a nice enough guy in interviews and an interesting enough guy. And, he does a lot of boxing commentary and stuff. So he's not, he's not like, a scary recluse or a legitimate maniac a la Tyson. But just has a very, very, he's just a scary looking dude. He's absolutely enormous. And just a very scary looking dude, and kind of carries that presence. You believe him to be a vicious knockout artist kind of guy, both in the ring and out of it, like I said. Whereas Tyson Fury, in a lot of ways, is the exact opposite, except for the size. Absolutely enormous himself. 6'8", at times in his career. Close to 400 pounds. That was, of course, due to lots of partying and drinking and drug use and all that kind of stuff. He's gotten over all of that. He had, problems with mental health issues and suicidal thoughts and all of this stuff, and a long, fall from grace after becoming a champion, 5 years ago or whatever. Life got out of control. Never took a loss in the process, however, as ultimately just kind of had to vacate the belts and really just his life really kind of hit the skids, and he's rebounded, better shape, better health than ever, and in the ring a much different style than Deontay Wilder, much kind of flashier, very quick hands, quick feet, a much more traditionally technical boxer. All right, from Tyson Fury. In the ring, out of the ring, extremely charismatic, an amazing story. He's got the great story of, just like I said, overcoming the drug and substance issues and all of that. As well, he's like a legitimate English tinker, right? Like one of those traveling Jippo types from, think Brad Pitt from Snatch, all right? That's literally what this asshole claims to be. And not only claims to be that, but claims to be like from a family of like 10 generations of bare knuckle English gypsy champions. All right, so his nickname is the Gypsy King. So I'm not stereotyping any of this. All right, this is his legitimate claim is that he comes from a long lineage of bare knuckle champion gypsy fighters in England. So who's not rooting for this guy? All right. Second of all, extremely sharp tongue, charismatic in the pressers, kind of Conor McGregor without all of the, just fake bluster and ego and all of the kind of negativity that Conor McGregor brings to it. He's just got the hilarious English accent and occasionally drop an F-bomb on his way to talking about how great the opponent is and about how humble his attitude tends to be since his fall from grace. So just gives you every reason to love him. However, over the last year, since the first matchup really put them both on the map in the sports world, really soaked up the fame and has kind of gone over the top, actually. Most recently, while Deontay Wilder was setting up to face King Kong Ortiz, probably the third best heavyweight in the division, Tyson Fury was overseas competing in WWE events, right? Doing gigs for Vince McMahon in the WWE. Really does claim himself to be a grand entertainer more than just a boxer. Over his last 3 fights, which have all been against relatively unknown European, what I like to call tomato cans. All right. He's had wins against 3, unknown Europeans. However, in all of those fights, the kind of main story has been all about the ring walk and the hilarious post-fight interview, as opposed to the in-ring action. Whereas in the process, Deontay Wilder, over the last year and a half, has spent his kind of tune-up fights for this, fighting, like I mentioned, King Kong Ortiz, which was a fight that was a rematch from a fight that he already won the first time, but Wilder gave him a challenge, so he demanded a rematch so he could knock him out again and prove the naysayers wrong. As well, the Dominic Breazeale, which was just an absolutely hilarious highlight reel first or second round knocked-out against the guy that was talking lots of trash against him. So a little bit of a grudge match for Wilder, just with an emphatic early knockout. And then King Kong Ortiz, who I really believe to be next to Fury and Tyson, like I've mentioned a couple times here, but probably the best heavyweight in the division outside of those two. All right. So Deontay Wilder has been giving you the fights you want to see and taking on high-level competition. Tyson Fury has been fighting in the WWF and concentrating more on wearing Apollo Creed's shorts in the fight. Right. Which I love both moves. However, you need to back it up with some in-ring action. He will finally get his chance 15 months after the first fight here in a couple of weeks in Vegas, where the first fight, like I keep mentioning, by the way, was an absolute classic. Kind of alluded to it earlier, but I guess really forever remembered by not the Deontay Wilder knockdown, but the Tyson Fury getting up, where he rose to his feet like the Undertaker, literally, just flat on his back, unconscious at the 5 count, up on his feet, ready to fight. by the time the ref hit 9 was truly amazing after, a great fight, which was really controlled by Fury in the ring, which, is really kind of, like I mentioned, kind of what you expect in a Deontay Wilder fight, where he's not going to outbox you. You just have to survive the 12 rounds in the ring versus him. And I guess we'll give you a more detailed actual fight breakdown on the next episode as we really give you the fight preview leading up to the action. This being more about the announcement in general, right? But in one of the really dramatic moments in boxing in recent memory, Fury getting up, really after like I was saying, controlling the fight for the most part, and then the big knockdown by Wilder. Fury makes the call and finishes the fight. They go to the scorecards where it's ruled a draw. All right, which was a little interesting and also just very interesting, as well as is always a problem in boxing, but the judges. And I've talked about it on an episode past, but there needs to be a much more transparent, and uniform scoring system kind of made public to the fans and the media, and more, talked about from the judges and held accountable, and explained some of their decisions. But really, there needs to be kind of they need to really make public their scoring policies and their scoring, the actual scoring system of the fight before the fight, as opposed to after. All right, but the scorecard's a little crazy in this one, where one judge had Wilder winning big, which, despite Wilder had 2 knockdowns over the course of the fight. Other than that, it was hard to see Wilder winning, a lot of the rounds per se. So a judge had Wilder winning very big in the cards. That means had him winning more rounds than Fury, which is absolutely insane. All right, another judge still had Fury winning the fight after the 2 knockdowns. Which is, still had Fury winning the fight pretty significantly as well after the 2 knockdowns, which is, at the very least, the 2 knockdowns are going to make the fight a pretty close Fury decision at the very best, which would be totally fair, but you can't rule Fury to win significantly, because then you're not really giving him rule the knockdowns 10-9s, that's not making any sense. And then another judge happened to have the porridge just at the right temperature for a draw, which really, at the end of the day, usually I'm the only asshole in the world that loves a draw, because I love a good controversial decision at the end of the day. And a lot of times a fight, just, the way it plays out, if there's a lot of, controversy and argument around who won and who lost, a draw is really probably the appropriate decision. It really was, the case of Wilder, Fury rather, really controlling the fight, winning more rounds. However, Deontay Wilder landing the 2 big blows, and really, the thing that everybody will remember, like I said, was the late knockdown. However, Fury made the call and got up, which really probably should have won him the fight. In my opinion, I felt that Tyson Fury probably should have got the decision for getting up in that fight. I felt like he had probably done enough on the scorecards with the points throughout the fight to earn himself, a comfortable 2-point cushion lead going in to that last round. All right, so felt that he probably deserved a win, although had no problem with the draw in that scenario, especially because I figured that with the whole situation setting the sports world ablaze, and finally had somebody talking positively about boxing, which, really in recent years it's been about the disgrace that was the Mayweather-McGregor fight, or the disgrace that never was the Pacquiao-Mayweather fight at any, at the right, proper, fair and just parts of their career, fighting way too late when nobody cared. So that was, the black cloud hanging over boxing boxing for years. Before that, it was really how there never was any heavyweights. Before that, it was how, Tyson was going batshit. So it's just been a long time since there's been real, positivity in the sport, especially in the heavyweight division. The Wilder-Fury fight changed that. And then we wait a year and a half for the rematch. And like I've alluded to it a couple of times, have they waited too long? Have they created so much sizzle that they've burnt the steak to a crisp? And now it's just not as appetizing as it would have been, 6 months after. Like I said, much different routes to getting here for the two, as Tyson Fury really has been on a campaign of fame and notoriety and trying to gain public interest, and really more like a politician than a boxer trying to go out there, get his name familiar, touching hands and kissing babies with the American fight fans, whereas Deontay Wilder has been hitting the speed bag as hard as he can in 60-second increments, not understanding how that thing works. But finally, the fight is set, and more excited we could not be. However, we will already start looking past it, as you do have to wonder. And like I mentioned, full breakdown of the fight going down next episode as we lead up to the official fight night with the full Wilder-Fury breakdown. However, if we're talking about the announcement, I guess we can talk about the next announcement that will be coming and what is next in the heavyweight division, as of course we talked about it really being one of the bigger fight stories of the summer, and then I guess last episode with the rematch of the Joshua Ruiz whole situation, where Anthony Joshua really at the time of the Fury Wilder first match, Anthony Joshua as well, undefeated heavyweight from England with a lot of respect and a big reputation, and we really thought to have a third big name on the horizon. Over the summer, of course, the all-time, upset to Andy Ruiz, avenged in Saudi Arabia last month, holding all the straps, holding, I guess, 3 out of the 4 straps in the division. All right, so a huge unification bout potential on deck for the winner. All right, and especially if Tyson Fury wins, with both fighters being in England, being from England, you put that fight in Wembley. It's the all-time biggest fight in English boxing history. You put Wilder in there, and you've got a real legitimate American heavyweight knockout artist with a chance to unify all 4 belts at the heavyweight division. Either or, it's an absolute mega fight for Anthony Joshua, who, however, I still feel needs to do a little bit of reputation maintenance after that big loss to Ruiz. It's going to take more, especially with Ruiz showing up to Saudi Arabia even more fat and out of shape than he was the first time, which was why he was a 40-1 underdog. Because he literally looks like I do, and he's fighting a 6'5" Adonis-like creature that just kicked the shit out of him in the last fight. However, it did not really make up for the fact that he lost to him the first time, because you still think he has a glass jaw and wouldn't be able to last 2 rounds with Wilder, and would probably get worked by Fury as well. So he needs to really put a couple of more big wins on the resume and start changing the perception of him in the fight public before that fight really reaches, a mega fight category between, outside of just an on-paper great fight between the unification belts or the 2 English fighters or whatnot. For fight fans to really believe that that's going to be a great heavyweight, unification bout, Anthony Joshua needs to earn a little bit more respect to get on the same level as Fury and Wilder in the first place. All right. And then, of course, there holds the potential for a three-peat, where I'm calling it now. But especially with Joshua needing time to kind of, build his reputation and name up a little bit, and Wilder and Fury just being the two far and away biggest stars in the sport, it would make sense to make a lot more money with each other. All right, the first fight being a draw, there'll be a little bit of an unsatisfied feeling between the two fighters if this one goes down in a close decision. All right, so especially if Fury wins a close decision, I would not be surprised if Wilder is campaigning for a rematch, given the fact that a Wilder Fury 3 would make a lot more money than a Wilder Dylan White or a Tyson Fury Adam Kalinowski. All right. Would not be surprised if you hear a three-peat start to brewing, but let's focus on that in episodes 8, 9, and 10 of Big LW's KO Cast, because we got to get through Wilder Fury 2 first, the epic rematch, officially set for Saturday night, February 22nd. And like I said, full fight breakdown coming up on episode 6 of Big LW's KO Cast. But for episode 5 and our opening punch of episode 5, that is, those were my thoughts and feelings on the Wilder Fury rematch announcement. So, definitely looking forward to that.
Big F! WEFUNK. We funk.